Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أنزل من السماء ماء فسالت أودية بقدرها فاحتمل السيل زبدا رابيا ومما يوقدون عليه في النار ابتغاء حلية أو متاع زبد مثله كذلك يضرب الله الحق والباطل فأما الزبد فيذهب جفاء وأما ما ينفع الناس فيمكث في الأرض كذلك يضرب الله الأمثال. This is a translation from Surah Al-Arad, ayat 18. He sends down water from the sky so that valleys flow according to their measure, and the flood bears on its surface swelling foam. And from that which they heat in the fire, seeking to make ornaments or utensils, come out a foam similar to it. Thus does Allah illustrate truth and falsehood. Now, as to the foam, it goes away as rubbish, but as to that which benefits men, it stays on the earth. Thus does Allah set forth parables. In my today's Dars al-Quran, I would like to speak on the topic which is related here in this verse, and I'll explain that how this verse connects with this topic. The topic which I've chosen is the need for the Holy Quran, a divine book of law, and the explanation of that connection I'll give after I read the introduction that is given to the surah by Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, which contains this ayat, and also the commentary which Hazur mentioned, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu mentioned on this ayat. So in this, the introduction to this surah, Hazur says that the surah goes on to develop the theme that so great are the spiritual powers of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that he can overcome his enemies single-handedly, even as a man having eyes can overcome a host of blind men. Polytheism cannot stand against the doctrine of unity of God. That is, those who follow shirk. Nor can the votaries of false gods against the devotees of the true God. The enemies of truth will melt and vanish like the foam or froth. Men of weak understanding see only the rising foam or froth, but do not care to see the gold or pure water underneath. The foam and froth disappear, and pure water and gold remain. Similarly, the superficial and trifling beliefs of the polytheists are bound to perish, and the great and noble ideas preached by the Quran will endure, and its teachings, being in harmony with human nature, will make their way into the hearts of men they will gradually come to realize on which side lies the truth when they compare the moral stature of the believers with that of the disbelievers. Mighty signs will be shown and great miracles wrought by means of the Quran and human hearts. The strongest of all earthly citadels shall fall. So that is to say, the usefulness of the divine law, that the Holy Quran, the teachings of the Holy Quran will one day be realized. And we can see that that happened in the time of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and throughout the history of Islam, how Islam spread throughout the world, and how that came about was basically because of the usefulness that people found from the teachings of the Holy Quran, and they benefited by it. And we're going to see that again in this day and age, this time with the coming of the promised Messiah as well, where the reinvigoration to get the message of the Quran out to the world has been organized under God's divine plan through the promised Messiah, alayhi salatu wasalam. So the in this one ayat as well, the analogy which God has used the word as parable, he's given an illustration, drawn this illustration for those who can understand it, by giving these two illustrations of a flood and that of a blacksmith who is making an ornament. So anyhow, I would like to read what Hazrat Muslim Maud has said in explaining that. He said the verse has used two very apt illustrations. The first, it says that when rain falls and water begins to flow in various directions, then so much foam and froth appears on the surface of the water in places which are quite clean, that it seems to cover it altogether. But soon the foam subsides and the water is seen rushing along. In the second illustration, froth is referred to as appearing on the surface of gold or silver or any other metal when the smith melts it to make ornaments or utensils, but the smith removes the scum and then only pure metal remains behind. And then he continues to say that in the first illustration, truth is compared to water and falsehood to foam, which in the beginning seems to prevail over truth, but in the end it is carried away even as rubbish is swept away by a powerful current of water. In the second illustration, truth is likened to gold or silver, which when melted brings forth a foamy excretion, which is cast away, leaving behind the unmixed metal, pure and bright. The parable implies that before the mighty onrush of Islam, the foam and froth of false beliefs and practices will disappear. The parable also means that through the prophets of God, a great awakening in the nature of man causes a conflict between his good inclinations and the evil customs and usages to which he has subjected himself. Those whose inner nature is good emerge from this conflict with the wrong ideas and beliefs replaced by right ones. So this is what I would like to today to talk to about this subject in relation to the Holy Quran, that all those ideas, those opposing ideas, which we find in the society today, which are like the flood waters when they rise, and everyone is looking at all of this flood, and all they're seeing on top of this flood is all of that debris and this foam and these things which looking is very dirty, but they're getting overwhelmed by it. and they're thinking that this is the right thing, or this is all that is there for us, and not realizing that the underneath that surface is the water, and which is represented by God, meaning that is the true, lasting, meaningful teachings. These are what will prevail, and that's what happens after a flood goes away. The clean waters come. They're and all the waste is left to the side. That meaningless froth, which is not substantial, also goes to the side. And so that this is how I'd like to connect this, is that when we first look at the Holy Quran, we try to understand it, and we try to come to the meaning. We are actually confronted by many opposing ideologies, which are, sort of hidden under this free and liberal society, where everyone, is able to assume or to learn and to get all these new ideas, but not realizing that they are actually opposing ideas to the long-lasted substantial truths that are there. And the Holy Quran is definitely that one substantial truth, which I would like to, during the month of Ramadan, to illustrate that, and illustrate the qualities and the reasons why we should learn the Holy Quran, why we should adapt to it, and how it is beneficial for us. But before going into that, I wanted to first to explain some of the opposing ideas, those ideas which are very strongly influencing everyone in society, especially we can say now everywhere in the world with the media. The Western society's imprint is everywhere, and whether we are here in Canada or whether we're in some other country of the world, the Western influence and these ideologies are very strong, and they're very much gaining they're gaining sway, and people are believing in them and following them. And just like that analogy of the flood, everyone in the world is seeing all of these things and assuming that what we are seeing is reality, or this is beneficial for us now. But what is really beneficial is what is hidden under, and there is there are some aspects I would like to discuss about that under the disguise of freedom, all of these ideologies are being set in place, which are primarily there to take the man away, human beings away from God. And it's not just by some accident that just because we have technology, we have access to the internet, we have access to so many books and ways in which we can get to the bottom of everything, that it's just a natural process that there are so many teachings and things that are coming about and they're in front of us, and we are accessing them, and it's just a natural process. That is not what is going on, and there is a plan to it, and there has always been plans to it, which I would like to discuss before getting into the Holy Quran specifically. That there are designs and plans to distract people away from following religious law, from following the regulations which we find in religious law. It was we can see it happening in previous religions. We can also see it happening today with all religions and with Islam. And what is that there is what is the trend of these ideologies? Trend is that to take people away from following any practical teaching and following a tradition and the teachings from God, in the form of the law, or we would call it, as Muslim, we call it the Holy Quran, and they would teach that this is that it's better not to take on these religious teachings, because they're more of a burden for you. They will reduce your your freedoms, and they'll become problematic for you, and even they may be a source of suppression for you. Rather than actually what we can illustrate, and I will illustrate further in the Dars al-Quran, that in fact following a religious teaching, it helps us for our physical wellness, our material wellness, our moral wellness, and our spiritual wellness. So these opposing ideologies against religious practices, religious teachings, there are a variety of them, and I would like to explain some of them today in my dars. Actually, I will probably only be able to speak on one, but I'll just go through all of the ones which I would like to go through first. And I'll just show here in my screen the the four that are primarily we'll talk on. Sorry about that. Just find the document. No. Anyways, I'm having some problem here trying to figure out how to get my document here. Anyways, what I wanted to discuss is, first of all, this concept of the law is a curse. It actually occurred to me when I was discussing this issue in our Tabligh class, that how prevalent this idea is, and how effectively it has influenced the mind of the people in the West, and I'll go into that actually primarily today, because of the time. We can probably just stick on that for today. The second is the second also influence that we have against the adopting religion or following a religion is a concept called syncretism. This is actually something where we find that in society, in history, and it's being practiced now, that there is an amalgamation of religion being taken place, where all the religions are being sort of brought together, or the followers of every religion brought together to follow a mismatch of this and that and this and that of various religious teachings. It could be from something a little bit from Islam, something from Buddhism, something from Zoroastrianism, something from Hinduism, something from Christianity, also practicing Torah cards, and so many other types of Wiccanism, and also atheistic beliefs. So all these sort of New Age sort of spiritual ideas as well, which they sort of categorize them in, along with religions. They sort of trying to amalgamate these ideas, and the aim we can see, which is that the followers or the people will move away from their actual traditions and their religious practices and teachings, and they will sort of be amalgamated into the society. Hazur, inshallah, when I get to this, I'll go into detail about this, how Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Ramallah has explained that this is a design plan made so that the followers of various religions will actually be moved away from their teachings and made that they should just follow the society's the values of the society. So the next thing also, which is related to this, is we can also say that is assimilation. We see the assimilation processes going on, where immigrants come into a society, or a society came to, like we see in the case of North America in its past, where it was conquered by Europeans, and the assimilation was forced assimilation. And that now we are seeing where it was a forced assimilation for the Aboriginal people, and now we're finding that the assimilation process is there, but it is subtle, or it is something which is a part of the a part of your the process when you come into the country as a new immigrant, so that you can adopt to the new value system. And when you do that, when you go through that, you're educated to to think about your teachings and your traditions as something as a I could say substandard, that they shouldn't be held as equal to the standard of the values of the society which we're living in. So that's assimilation. Assimilation, we don't need to go into so much about the extreme aspect of it today, but just give you an example that assimilation, when the Europeans wouldn't allow the natives to the Aboriginals to practice their marriage laws. They wouldn't allow them. They wouldn't allow their religious leaders to practice their faith. They wouldn't allow the Aboriginals to practice their religious faith. So that was a forced assimilation, and we're just seeing that now we are getting out of that, but we even are encountering those people who are even today have gone through the assimilation process. But anyhow, I'll go into that in more detail. The next I would be talking on about is the concept that religions are man-made, and just explain this, how we can counter this. But this is sort of an atheistic belief that is there trying to persuade the people who are following faiths and traditions that just all religions, they're man-made, and they came from the thinkings of a person's mind. And this is sort of one of the opposing viewpoints to keep people away from adopting their faith. And this is something that Hazrat Muslim Maud Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu has explained is important for us to know before we learn the Holy Quran itself. And then the last point, and there are many that we can go into, but the last is sort of a which is very obvious, is that in society we find that the stress that for people to have their complete individual freedom to such an extent where freedom is one thing. Of course, everyone should have freedom to think, to eat, to go to work, to earn money, to practice their faith. That's one thing. But another thing is the freedom which is there, which is sort of the which I would like to talk about, which we all know, is that we're in a society where there is a freedom to be completely disassociated with realities and responsibilities, the consequences of our deeds and our actions, and to try to disassociate ourselves from this world and this reality. How can you say, okay, how is it possible? Because everyone has to live in this world. They have to, they have to work. They have to follow the rules. They have to, get into a car and follow the rules and regulations when they get onto the road. Yes, of course, but we see that element in society where freedom, trying to get people into the thinking that they can get this complete freedom from everything. And that's where materialistic society is really has a lot of power and a lot of sway on the people, because it's teaching them that you can get this freedom if you can get more wealth. And the more you struggle and you strive to get more wealth, you can get closer to that ultimate freedom, which will get you away from the having to do the day-to-day work. But this is not reality. But we see people gambling. We see people are constantly in this rigmarole, trying to see how much wealthy that they can become and get out of this system. But this is a non-reality. And then we see the addictions. This is one of the parts of the addiction and the promotion of addiction, and how even the religions, which I'll explain later, of how even the concept of amalgamation of religions is actually helping to promote the concept of using addictive drugs as part of faith. But in reality, what it is doing is giving this false notion to people that you can release yourself from all of your responsibilities, at least temporarily. Just like when someone takes a drug for any pain, that the pain goes away temporarily, but the pain does not go away. If a doctor gives you a medicine painkiller for arthritis, it doesn't get rid of your arthritis. Your arthritis still remains. That's the reality of it. So the same thing works with drugs. The sort of suppress the mind's feeling of anxiety, of all the responsibilities and everything in this world, and free a person from that. But that's always temporarily, and then the next moment when someone's out of that, they fall into reality, and they see their pain in front of them. So that's why there's a continuous cycle of always getting back into drugs and or some type of addiction of something. It could even be something even non-drug related addictions. But anyhow, that sort of introduction of the things I want to talk to before I discuss the need of the Holy Quran. Today, I want to talk, I'll just, with the time that I have left, talk on the religious law as a curse. Where did this ideology come from? I think that those who understand Christianity to some degree know that this comes from Christian teachings, and the Christian teaching has a lot of influence on the Western society. And the reason why I wanted to discuss this is that this is actually one of the teachings which is actually quite opposed to Islamic belief, that we believe that we should follow and practice the Holy Quran. And when we live in a society where they primarily inherited this ideology that the law is a curse, then it has influence when we as Muslims go out and we encounter people, whether those people are practicing Christians, meaning they believe in Christ, and they may go to church on the weekend, or they might read the Bible, right? Or whether they're just their parents were Christians, or their generations from past were Christians, but they still retain this belief that law is a burden, is a curse, And it still has an effect, and we can see it has a very strong effect on the society which we live in today. And that's why I wanted to discuss this as one of the first competing or opposing ideologies to following religious teachings, even though it comes from a religion, even though it comes from the followers of Christianity, this teaching. So the question then, how do we well, we first have to understand what it is, and then we have to look at what are the ways which we can reconcile it. Can it be reconcilable? And we can reconcile it. We can actually understand it. And so Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu explaining this concept, he said that if the New Testament had asserted that human nature was a curse in itself, this would be a reasonable theory, but it says that the law is a curse. He's just explaining here, I'm just giving some references because he's explaining here and giving sort of some responses as well to it. And then he gives reference to the Bible, and he refers to the Bible where it says that Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. So this is actually the teaching which was given to us by St. Paul, that in order for this curse of the law to be wiped out, then Jesus had to be hanged on the tree or hanged on the cross in a cursed fashion in order to wipe out the curse of the law. And this is biblically going into it, going back to its source, to its reference, where it came from. So continuing what Hazrat Muslim Maud said, he said, in other words, the New Testament does not find fault with the judgment of human nature, condemning a particular act as sinful, but it says that the law is a curse, in that it bears such commands as people do not find practicable, and it claims that Jesus therefore scrapped it. So what he says is that the human law, the law of nature, where people, human nature is that they have a conscience. They would condemn a certain thing as wrong, and it says that that in the teachings of the Bible they do not actually say anything that's wrong, but they actually say about the religious law, which talks about when, and says specifically that someone did anything wrong, that it became a curse, and that it became unmanageable or unpracticable to be followed, and so therefore Jesus got rid of it. And although I'll explain that this is not the case. Jesus did not get rid of it, but that is what his followers, later on, out of misunderstanding, they came to this conclusion. So this is where it came from, and this is where the understanding and what the followers of Jesus came to this understanding, that because the law was difficult to follow, did not apply, so therefore Jesus got rid of it. So this is also something that's carried into also today into society. When we encounter people in society, they also keep this ideology that which is based in this teaching, that laws are, when they become outdated, when they become unuseful, when they are, because the advancements of time, so there should be a replacement, or there should be a reformation, or they should be done away with. So that is very important to understand that where this came from, because people, when trying to read the Quran and trying to understand the Holy Quran, or even their religious teaching, the Bible, they'll say, no, there's no need to, it's all like from the past, and they'll lump Islam, they'll lump the Quran with all that in the past, and they say that this is, this is the thinking, and this, you can see this is the trend, and it works to a person who has not done their research, has not studied and educated themselves about the Holy Quran or even their teachings, and understood that what did it actually mean when Jesus said that, when he did what was actual actions. They don't go into it. So you can see how this lays towards bringing people away from studying a religious teaching and religious scripture. And then there's an interesting point that Hazrat Muslim Maud Razila Ta'ala Anhu, he brought up, and that's something which is something which should be remembered. And Islam, and this is also Islamic as well, is that within human nature, human beings, they have in them the consciousness, and they come to realize that in their conscious which is right and which is wrong. And Hazur explained in his writing about this is that when we see something wrong, whether there was a law which was made applicable before Jesus in the time of Moses, or whether Jesus came and the law was non-applicable, that action which someone had done, like he gave theft or murder example of these, or lying, or any type of wrong, that is still whatever action has been done is done, and everyone knows that by their conscience that is wrong. So the very act of a person, and this is the point that I want to make here, is that the very act of a person saying that that there is no need to follow any law which is to keep us restricted to moralities, right? So if you say that you don't want to follow anything, still the problem will still remain that when you do anything, your conscience will act like the judgment will act of a book when you're reading a book from God, which is telling you, okay, this is, you shouldn't do this, you should do. So your conscience will also tell you, when something you have done is wrong. And he gave the example. He was talking about example where people have not come in contact with Islam, or they haven't come in contact with any religious teaching. That how then does God judge those people? So according to that, God would judge them based on their conscience. And God instilled in the conscience of man right and wrong, and also the desire to know God and to worship God. And he gave reference to the promised Messiah, alayhi salatu wasalam, when he said, and I'll give this quotation, and this is very important because the point I want to make, I'm going to read this, and the point that I want to make is that as much as people would like to escape from the responsibilities of their religious teaching towards their fellow human beings, or towards their family, towards their society, they still, as much as if they would like to say, okay, I don't want to follow that religion because asking me to do this, right? And I don't want to do that. As much as they would like to, they would like to do that, and they have the freedom to do it. And the fact of the matter is that when they do something wrong, when they try to fulfill all of their desires, and without thinking about the harm that it gives to others and also harm to themselves, what will happen is that they will still, their conscience will still bother them. They will still, at the end of the day, be, their heart will be in misery, and anxiety for what they have done. And they will suffer the consequences of that, because that's the real world that we live in. So I just want to read what the Promised Messiah said about this, just to think over and understand this. He said that in effect, the same thing when he observes that such people will be tested by their natures. Allah the Exalted will not require of them why they did not offer the prayers prescribed by the Holy Prophet ﷺ. So that's in context of those who didn't know about Islam, and even if those context of those people who were learning about knew about Islam, but they really didn't know truly about it. So then he says that he will require of them whether they had done the duty of worship in accordance with their in accordance with their nature's urge of dutiful worship of the deity, meaning that they in their nature they would also want to worship a god. The same applies to acts like perjury, telling lie under oath, theft, highway robbery. One may indulge in misappropriating other people's property, taking it as a normal thing, but when other person lifts his property, he calls him a crook. This goes to show that in the heart of hearts, he knows that misappropriation is an act of dishonesty. It is true that such a one cannot be called a sinner in terms of the Sharia law, but he will be guilty in terms of natural impulses and will meet his, what he deserves. He'll get the reward of what his actions have done. So it's very important to realize this thing, that even if we do reject the Holy Quran, or we do reject any teaching or commandment, that God is also built in our nature this system of consciousness where we know and we understand what is right and what is wrong, and we will be which we still believe that everyone will be accountable for what they have been taught and what they know. And as Muslim, we shouldn't take this lightly, and we shouldn't take it as a this childish, being so childish that if we don't take serious our faith and following our teachings, that God is not going to count us, make us accountable for them. Because if God can make us feel accountable and guilty for, like to a person who doesn't follow any teaching, then definitely a person who then is following a teaching, definitely there will be, God is going to count of those at one day from us. So I'll inshallah continue on this tomorrow, inshallah, on the same line. And then we'll go from there tomorrow. Jazakumullah to everyone. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.